So we're very fortunate to have two special guests, Malik and Chris Michael, who are not just talented photographers, but also incredibly smart and savvy entrepreneurs. Both have their own specific styles, and we will go over their unique approaches and motivations to what they look for in an image. But they're also close personal friends who do tons of adventurous traveling. Sometimes they even travel together, which can yield very different perspectives of the same place. The one standing commonality is that they both come away with spectacular photographs that paint their own signature interpretations of the world and these special places as far as the ends of the earth, where many of us may never travel. So for a little background on our guest, let's begin with Malik. Om's roots are squarely planted in the world of technology. As a writer and journalist, he founded the tech blog and media company GigaOM, and more recently shifted into the venture capitalist world, where he currently sits as a partner at True Ventures. Is the kind of guy you might occasionally see brought onto Bloomberg to give reactions and expert analysis to the latest Apple news and tech sector happenings. And like many people in tech, he has an appreciation for technological innovations. So his on-the-side photography passion really bloomed in 2015, and it naturally led him to the world of Leica. Om's photographic style is that of a cool and calculated Zen-like discipline. He often shoots very long exposures all around the world and even his home of San Francisco. It's a slow process that gives one plenty of time to take in the atmosphere and contemplate life while you wait for the camera to pull in all that magic. They're the kind of photos that go great with some lo-fi beats and lots of time to just have some deep thoughts, man. Now, our second guest is Chris Michael, who 20 years ago became a full-time photographer after serving in the US Navy and having been an entrepreneur founding Affinity Labs and military.com. In a way, Chris is on his third career now, and like he has a thirst for adventure. So much so that he has had photographs featured in most major publications, and he has traveled to the ends of the earth, from the edge of space to down below the ocean depths, all the way to the poles and nearly everywhere in between. He's been to Antarctica 7 times, teaches with the Santa Fe photographic workshops, and is a guide for natural world safaris. And before we forget, yes, that photo that we saw at the beginning was indeed a selfie that he shot at 70,000 feet while on a U-2 spy plane. As diverse as his background and his wide scope of travels, Chris's work is equally varied and rich with quality. The way he captured these settings are the kind of photos that make you feel like you were there too. So with all that being said, I'd like to welcome Chris and Please go ahead and turn on your cameras and microphones and say hi to everyone.
It's great to be here.
Hey, great to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to chat with me and with our audience. So you guys have photographed all kinds of things and you have very particular styles, which we just went over. You guys actually should be somewhere right now. Am I right?
Well, we're supposed to be in Svalbard on a small boat making photographs of, I don't know, polar bears, empty spaces. So we're almost there. At least we're together. So I'm grateful for that.
So yeah, you guys have traveled a lot together, and you would be traveling right now if not for the ongoing pandemic, unfortunately. But at least now here with an audience of now looking at around 400 people to chat with, we can share some of your work, which I'm so grateful for.
It's kind of like being on the boat, but with more people and and fewer drinks.
It's like it's a really big boat, though.
Yeah, it's really.
Yeah, actually, that's a perfect segue into the first picture I wanted to show, which is kind of a funny one, of on the ice. And how long ago was this taken, Chris? You shot this, right?
Yeah. When did we do this photo?
2017, roughly around this same time.
Yeah. That's where we're supposed to be right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty big boat, and so maybe all of our 400 attendees still wouldn't fit on it. And we wouldn't have enough drinks.
It's a tiny boat.
It's a tiny boat. It just looks bigger.
Okay.
Chris likes using wide-angle cameras, so that's what it really. To fit me in, you need a wide-angle camera because I can't fit into like a tele zoom kind of situation.
I'm glad you showed this photograph, not only because it's apropos right now because we're supposed to be there, but this is an example of where we take kind of. Well, I guess it wasn't an average moment. It was an interesting moment because we were in this unusual place. But, Ohm and I have looked at this photo many times, and it brings back so many good memories. And, that's the beauty of good photography, or any photography really, is it helps preserve those memories forever. And this is a photograph I'll always treasure.
Yeah, of course. And with that, you guys see things a bit differently though, and you will then, I assume, cherish those memories in different ways. You're seeking something different. Of course, this is a fun one and a great memory. But I wanted to then step into a comparison of one example, and we have a variety of your images to show here today. And I encourage everyone here to check these guys out on their Instagrams and websites. I'll have the links coming up later. So this is one that we have Ohm's interpretation, and then we have Chris's interpretation, and I'm going to kind of cycle back and forth between these. So what's the story? Where was this taken, and what do you see that's what do you seek that you made these different
Well,
images?
the spot is in Svalbard, and it's a place called New Azealand, and it's a research base. And this tower may or may not be familiar to you, but it's historically important. And it's the airship tower from the airship Norg, who in 1926, Amundsen and Byrd made the first trip to the North Pole. So we were out there in a snowstorm just taking a look at this really cool thing.
Wow. And then, but Ohm, you made a very different image, and can you talk a little bit about what you seek? And we saw a few of your images as we opened up. Why do you pursue this style of photography?
I mean, that's I don't quite know how to answer that specific question, but I can explain the why of my photography. My photography is about looking for a kind of, to not be cluttered by a lot of things, to have a sense of, serenity, peace, calm. I gravitate towards silence mostly because I feel we live in a very loud world where everybody and everything is shouting at us all the time. And when I go and try and make photographs, I'm looking for the silence. And I think I want to capture the silence and that moment in my image. And I think that's the why of my photography. I don't really try and have any, like I don't look at an object and just say, I got to take a photograph of this object. I just feel something when I'm there, and I listen to my feelings and I listen to my heart and just feel that that's how this should be, captured and rendered onto the screen by me. And what I feel is what I try and create, and that's the why of my photography.
Fantastic. And I've seen it in so many of your works where when you say it's serenity and quietness, and I think it's how appropriate that, you come from the world of tech where everything's a mile a minute and it's just nonstop, right? And you seek out, I'm just going to skip to this one, which I personally love this image where, again, it's quiet. I know that there's a lot going into this image, but its beauty is in its simplicity. And now,
I love this photo. It's great.
yeah. And Chris, just to change gears though, like, so do you have a philosophy in your style?
Well, it is kind of interesting because I think maybe we photograph or drawn to the things that we seek, just like you said. By the way, this is my new photo assistant, Sadie. Just a little
welcome, Sadie,
helping out here. I have two kind of objectives. One is, I love to photograph humans in extreme environments. And that could be the North Pole or South Pole or here in Svalbard. Because, the emotion of humans in those environments is really powerful. The other is I'm very interested in giving photos that are meaningful to the people in the photographs. Mm-hmm. So, there's this photo as it stands alone, which is a nice moment in Svalbard. But it's a cool thing to give this image to the people that are on this boat because it can become quite meaningful to them later in their lives. That's the alchemy of photography is, especially with portraiture, photographs often become more valuable over time.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that, photography can be so fulfilling for the photographer, but sometimes we have to remind ourselves that, you know, not everyone has the best pictures of them taken day in, day out. And when you gift it to them or just even share them a digital file, you know, a quick email or a social media post, you know, it can go such a long way to making their day or making them feel special in what they do. Yeah, absolutely. And I've got some more. We've got actually already a few questions. I think one of them we touched on your kind of different styles. More of a fun question though, and maybe more technical. Like, someone asked, how was Ohm sitting on the ice? Is it just that thick?
It was thick enough to carry my weight, so
that's not the context I meant that question to come out in.
Yeah. No, it was thick enough to stop the boat where it did, and we got off, and it was sea ice, but it was pretty thick, and it was pretty cold. I have to admit, I still feel cold from that.
I've only had that experience twice where a boat stopped in the ice and people got out there and at the North Pole. And it's really a freaky experience to step out of a boat, you know, not onto land, but on this frozen ice. And, you know, although this photo is sort of posed, it's sort of not. I mean, I think the best moments I've had on the ice and in these extreme regions were moments of quiet and peace and solitude. And I think Ohm was experiencing that. And no one fell through as far as I know.
I wanted to walk away. Unfortunately, the guides and the boat people would not let me walk away because there were better pictures about a mile away from where we were. Unfortunately, I didn't get the permission.
See, the polar bears were in favor of Ohm heading the mile away from the boat, but the guys with the guns were not.
But polar bears don't like spicy food. You don't understand that. So
okay.
This is gonna be an hour of you guys cracking me up, which I'm not surprised by. So yeah, amazing. So the boat stopped. You had to get up, but and yeah, it's such an unreal, and a lot of these settings are just so unreal. These
are all SL pictures.
Yeah, fantastic. And I see some people in the chat asking about how the cameras perform in these inclement environments. And I know you guys often shoot with the Leica SL amongst other Leicas and other cameras, but you know, the SL and SL2 are really built for this kind of, stuff.
That camera's a tank.
Yeah.
It just works.
So another couple of images that I pulled aside because I wanted to talk about your contrasting styles. And there's some areas where I can almost find some parallels, by the way. I'm just, you know, everyone kind of, not that there's a mimic, but it's just somewhere where, you know, the lines kind of cross a little bit. And I found this image from Ohm and this image from Chris very striking because, again, I think they actually, and this is just me talking, you guys are open to disagree or agree, you know, where we see a little bit of an example of your differing styles. Do you recall where each of these images were taken? I think these were different places, maybe.
You want to go, Chris?
Yeah, okay, this is Svalbard. And we were talking about this image before we came on, and this was originally in my reject pile. So I had taken a lot of photos. I'm not usually just shooting straight landscape. And sometime later, I went through, and there was something about the image that drew me in. And we were just saying that, you know, one nice thing about not deleting all of your raw pictures is sometimes it takes a little bit of space to really find that photo that was maybe most meaningful to you. Maybe that photo can find you when you're ready to see it. So it's been nice to go back through and reprocess some of the photos and refine those memories.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I didn't really edit my Svalbard photos till about a week ago, only because I got an email from Chris saying, you know, we could have been in Svalbard. And I was like, I can be in Svalbard. Went back to my pictures and edited them and just said, I'm in Svalbard now. Like, you know, I think we just, we put too much, you know, weight into being physically somewhere, whereas we can go in our memories, we can be anywhere. And so for me, that was why I edited my archive, you know, photos from the Svalbard archive. I mean, and this is a photograph from Iceland where just, it's like, you know, it's somewhere on the main, you know, ring road they have, and we stopped for coffee, and I was just standing outside because I had been in a car with a couple of other people, and I just wanted to be alone, and this picture just happened.
Oh,
right?
are those birds? Is that, what are those?
Yeah, those are ducks.
This is an Malik wildlife study.
Yeah,
There you
I
go.
mean, there's enough life in there.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah. If Ohm is going to do wildlife, it would be in this
yeah, this
way
is,
where it's as minimal as possible in the frame. Yeah, absolutely.
you're a little big in the image for you, but
Yeah, but I think the whole point here is that everything in this picture is as it's supposed to be. You know, the ducks are not dominating the landscape. The mountain is the most important thing. You know, the universe is in balance. Like I didn't do anything there which was unnatural. This is my one lens I use for pretty much everything, and this is how it was. And I said,
Mhm.
okay, I don't need to improve on it. Maybe a little bit, just the conversion to black and white was the only thing I did. And otherwise, it just was right there in front of me.
Mhm. Yeah, amazing. And if we could actually touch on that for a bit longer with like we got some questions I'm seeing coming up asking Om a little bit about your technical style. So first and foremost, do you use ND filters for your long exposures?
I do use ND filters. I use Vine Country camera filters. Um, I have a 6 stop, 3 stop, and a 10 stop. I mostly use the 10 stop
Mhm.
during the day, and late in the evening, I use the 6 stop. 3 stop is just there because why not?
Gotcha. So you just have them at the ready for whatever the situation calls for.
Yeah, yeah, and they are twist. What do you call that? Twist off.
Mhm.
They're the round ones. Just like again, like nothing very complicated.
Gotcha.
I try and keep my kit very simple. Like just the fewer things is better,
Mhm.
less confusion.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had another question asking, in terms of your techniques for how you get kind of your signature look in your long exposures. Any comments on processing, or do you find that a lot of it just comes from the length of the shot that you did?
So a couple of things, right? Like I used to do a lot of long exposures, but I don't anymore. I think it was one of the techniques I learned, and I utilize it enough, but in a very subtle sort of a fashion now. My technique is that for a year, in 2018, I shot exclusively with film,
Mhm.
Tri-X, and I had like a MA with the same Summicron 50 millimeter lens, and I exclusively shot with film, and because I was shooting with film at Tri-X and Portra 400, I got used to not worrying too much about blowing the highlights. And by the end of that 1 year, I realized that I like to expose, like, make very bright images. And so since then, I have always exposed to the right,
Mhm.
and this is where, like, 90% of the work is done if you're like, if you're not blowing out the highlights, but you're closer to the edge, as close to the edge. And this is
Mhm.
where I would say that the SL2 is pretty spectacular, that you can go really to the extreme edge and and it doesn't blow out the highlights. So that's my usually my technique. And then after that, because I'm exposing to the right, the colors are not very saturated, and the Leica DNG files are also not very saturated. So
Mhm.
like 95% of the work is done. And if anything, I kind of do a little bit, sharpening, or like, maybe adjust the black points, and, or like, push the whites a little bit. But I keep it very simple. I think maybe 2 to 4 layers. And I play with luminosity. I do a lot of localized luminosity, and using curves on
Mhm.
Photoshop. That's it. Like I don't do any other adjustments.
Yeah, and the files are they're like you said they're not overly saturated. They're pretty flexible for your
Yeah,
needs.
yeah.
And Chris, I know you've shot with the SL and SL2 a lot. We actually have a variety of questions and a couple of them more on the gear as well. Someone asked, and Chris, if you can tackle this one, how does one prepare for trips to environments like these? Maybe in like what you choose to bring and how you prepare that gear that you bring.
yeah, long underwear is most important. Um,
Important stuff, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because I'm in favor of the one camera, one lens thing, but when you're in extreme environments, I have backup equipment. So this is where, I'd have two SLs, probably two drones, lots of batteries. I go to a lot of places where there isn't necessarily power, so I have solar or lots of extra batteries. You just have to be ready for a lot of things going wrong. I've lost a number of lenses, rolling off of boats, being dropped, hitting mountains. That's where having a small camera as a backup is probably not a bad idea. But I'll tell you that, as I said, that SL is a tank, and I've never had it give me any problems at all. And that's not true for a lot of other cameras. One of my great disappointments when I was up in the U2, I had a Canon 5D Mark II and an Olympus and a GoPro, and obviously the Canon was my primary shooter, and it failed at altitude. And that was the end of my experience with that camera system, because you just can't have that happen. And so I give the Leica folks a lot of credit for their gear.
I mean,
So, go ahead.
I use just one camera. I have one lens. Maybe I'll take another lens as a backup. And, I have a backup camera. It's called the iPhone. It's pretty good. I mean, it happened to me in Iceland in 2018. I ran out of film. Say, okay, I got the iPhone. That was it. For 6 days, I shot exclusively on the iPhone. That was fine. Like, I think sometimes it's very easy to get trapped in the gear question. And like, I think when you go to a place like, Svalbard, it's good to have backup, like batteries, backup one extra lens. But if you have the right camera, like the Leica SL, I mean, I don't really need another camera. That's like, it's just that good. Like, you don't need it. Like, the batteries you definitely need.
Yeah, please.
By the way, I can't not interrupt here. This photo is incredible. This might be one of my most favorite photos of yours. It's such a metaphor for so many things.
Yeah. Oh, I love this one. I just wanted to put it up so you could, talk over it. You already, I see some people in the chat. One person saying this is their favorite photo of yours.
Yeah, I'm following the chat. People are like, get Chris off the show. This is too good. I agree.
But it's funny you mentioned the iPhone and like I've actually and trying to keep it simple. Sometimes it can be a challenge, right? Because we can overthink things and maybe Chris, you maybe encounter this. How do you not overthink things when you're going to extreme environments? I don't know. It's a challenge. I know for me, like sometimes I bring only a 50mm lens, but I tell myself in the back of my head when I start getting tempted to use other lenses or bring more lenses, like, well, I've got my phone, that's 28. So I've got backup just in case, so I can actually think about that 50. But yeah, Chris, how do you try to keep it simple when you kind of have to cover everything?
Every time I brought a lot of equipment, I've always regretted it. I remember being at the South Pole and, the wind was howling and I had my huge camera bag, my fingers were frozen. I was messing around with the lenses and, it was just a mistake. And, it's pretty rare that I don't create the images I want with a more restrained set of gear. It's interesting because although I've been taking photographs a bit longer than Ohm, I'm gravitating to Ohm's world of simplicity. I heard Alan Schaller, who's a friend of mine who I admire deeply, talk about his experience with the monochrome and the 24. For many, many people, I really think that's the way to go. Just, find your focal length and live around there if you can. It's not always appropriate. This was not taken with an SL. This was taken with a drone. That was it. Sometimes in big environments like South Pole or Antarctica, getting some perspective is helpful. So you have to find the right gear for the right experience and the right environment. So
absolutely. Everything is a tool in your arsenal and they have the right usage. Cameras like the SL have more usage maybe than some others, but you mentioned that, go ahead.
Can I just interrupt for a minute?
Please,
I think if you have an SL and a 24-90 lens to go with it, I don't think you need another piece of gear. Like that lens is essentially 6 primes in one lens. It's as good, right?
Yeah.
Like that's my backup lens. right? Think about it. Like my primary lens is the APO 50 millimeter Summicron, the best lens Leica's ever made, period. Like it just is. And I shoot at f2 wide open.
Mm-hmm.
And it is amazing like what that lens can do. But the 2490, I mean, for like a zoom, you know, all-purpose lens, it is so amazing. Like I don't think people understand how spectacular a lens that is. And I think, you know, so the kit can be very small. You don't need a lot of things to go someplace. You know, the one thing one should not, you know, shy away from splurging, batteries. I have 6 SL batteries.
Hey,
And
dude, why,
even
why,
then,
why are you always borrowing my SL batteries then?
well, now I have 8 because I got 2 from you.
I bet,
You know,
by the way, just one comment on the 2490, and you know, it's an unusual zoom. You know, most camera systems are 2470, but just you know, so you guys asked ahead of time, you know, what's your apocalypse camera system if you could have one camera and one lens? That's it. I mean, if you have a 2470 or 2490, you know, you can get any pictures you want. And, you know, I'm supposed to be leading this trip to Svalbard and there's polar bears and I see people bringing 500 millimeter lenses and, you know, that's fine. It's the wildlife photographer's lens, you know, but the photos that all touch my heart are never made at those focal lengths. They're always made at more normal focal lengths. And even there, and even with wildlife, I think people would find that they could capture more powerful images if they pulled back just a little bit. You know, we don't need to be so close to everything all the time.
you know, our eyes don't have telephoto lenses, right? So why do we want to make photos which are like that? I think sometimes it's like salt, right? Or just a little bit of salt enhances everything. So too wide, ultra tele, those are great in small doses. But in reality, you need to know the focal length which makes you feel in sync with your photography, right? I
Yeah,
think
hey, can I interrupt you? Was this with a 50 here?
this is with the 2490. I don't know. It was, I think, 50 or 55 something.
I love this photo. You know, what's interesting about this photograph, I would say, you know, having taught some classes, you know, a lot of people would not, would be giving feedback. Well, you know, it's too washed out or too blown out. I love this photograph. I love, you know, we're letting the viewer fill in the blanks. We were talking about that earlier today. I find this just to be really, really compelling. This would look great on a wall. I mean, it's just a wonderful picture.
There's something about images that have controlled color palette and then also you know, a controlled kind of scale and like in terms of exposure and latitude. You know, this image is mostly highlights, right? But it has so much definition within them, right? There's so much to these kinds of photos, I think, that are harder to achieve in a lot of ways than, you know, getting the full histogram nice and balanced, you know.
But if I may, I think, you know, we have gotten distracted a little bit from like, you know, why this photo matters to me. It's like, when I saw this place, the way that you're talking about highlights, when you talk about highlights, I think about my state of happiness. You know, it's like weird. When I go into shadows, it's when I'm in my dark phase, when I'm like, you know, I'm hiding from the universe. This is like snow is my jam. So I'm happy. It's like you see highlights, I see happiness. That's how I think about, you asked me about my photography. That's what it really is. The highs and the mids are where the happiness and the silence and the peace is. Shadows is where we tend to go hide. And I don't want to hide with my photography. Like as simple as that. Like, you know, and it's very reflective of the place we are in, right? Like I think photography makes you understand your inner self. It should make you understand your inner self. If you're in a dark place, you will end up making dark, brooding photos. And if you're in a good place, you will start to make.
So, so if we start seeing some brooding photos, we need to have an intervention. Is that what you're?
You know, you've seen my dark, brooding pictures, and you know, I was in a pretty dark place for a very long time. So
I'm glad to see the highlights.
Yeah,
highlights Ohm is best Ohm.
yeah, like me too. I agree with you on that one.
Well, that actually brings me to a question I wanted to ask you both. What were the transformational moments in both of your photographic journeys? Chris, you want to lead off?
Um, okay, well, I'm on my third or fourth career now, and I never ever considered being a photographer. And I picked up a camera and took some photographs and liked the photographs and took more photographs and then bought a Leica. And pretty soon it became more than an obsession. It became the purpose of my life. And for about 12 years, I was taking photographs without any training. And somebody said, you should really take a class at the Santa Fe workshops. And I said, well, I don't really need it. And I went there anyway. And I took a class. My first class was with Kurt Marcus and then with Sam Abel. And both of those gentlemen changed my life and trajectory in photography. And, I knew that some of my photos were good. They felt good to me, but I didn't understand why. And, when you're with artists like that are that experienced, that compose beautiful, thoughtful, soulful images, it really crystallized for me my objectives in photography. So, for a lot of people out there making photographs, if you have a chance to be mentored by someone that you admire, and that's the beauty of photography, those people are out there, it can really, really make a big difference. And I would say that was a step function transformation for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic. And Om, you and I have spoken, and you said that you look back at some images you made in like 2015 and you weren't so happy with those anymore. What was it that really changed the game for you for your photography?
I think one of the things which I look back at, I think somewhere in 2017, I read a book called The Art of Stillness by Pico Iyer. And reading that book, and in that book, I found works by an Icelandic photographer. She lives in Canada now. I am not going to try and pronounce her name because I'm going to ruin it. But she has been incredibly influential in how I started to think about photography. I think in 2015, when I was starting out, everything was in the photos. By 2017, I had already figured out not everything needs to be in the photo. Not everything needs to say something. You have to leave something out. And I think I was on the journey. And I think in 2017, I found the right road to walk on. And I'm still walking on it. I don't know if I've, what my destination is, but I think reading that book, I also met a Canadian photographer called Michael Levin. Conversations with him. I became friends with a guy called Jonathan Krishley. He's another photographer, British guy but lives in France. But just having a chance to kind of converse with people who were like pretty advanced in their work and who had actually started to think about photography not as a technical subject but more like a spiritual quest. And I think for me, once I figured out photography was a way of expressing myself, my emotions, and being spiritual with photography, I think I got that kind of was like, the gears kind of clicked and meshed, and I just moving, like, okay, right? Yeah. Good to go. Yeah.
It's fantastic. And, so you mentioned, like kind of taking a reductionist approach or reducing kind of the image to, not always having to have everything in the shot. And I landed on this image purposefully, and I think this is actually kind of appropriate now, especially Chris, this is a different shot for you, and this is very minimal. We joked earlier when we were chatting before this, before we went live, about how this is a bit of to me, it's like a painterly version of an Ohm shot for you. And then similar here, where if we joke, if we took the person out of it, maybe this could be like a shot from Ohm.
I am one person away from an Ohm picture. One person. I just removed this woman, Leslie Wicks. This is in Antarctica. Then this might meet Ohm criteria. But I have something to look forward to, aspirational.
I agree with you on that one. No, I think, Antonio, this is like the best part of being a friend. Chris and I are pretty close friends. We meet each other whenever
Pretty
he's in,
close. I thought we're very close.
it's like you haven't come to see me once during the lockdown. So can't be that close. Uh, anyway, I think our friendship is that we spend a lot of time together talking about stuff. And I think he is probably, you ask me, like, he's probably the spark in who put me on this journey. Him and Vincent Lafore are the two people I give full marks to for getting me on the path of photography. But I think as we've spent more time together, we've started to influence each other in some ways or the other. I think I will say that, like, sometimes the student also influences the teacher. Chris is the teacher here. And I feel that, if that has happened, I think our true friendship, that's a good sign for me. That's the sign of our relationship and of our friendship, is that, we are slowly having an impact on each other's work. But I would be proud to make this photo even with a person.
I think that's a fantastic sentiment, Om, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I think it's something that's really special about the photography community. When you go online, there's people who are in kind of camps, and it's people who support their brand or whatever, and there's lots of like fighting and trolling and all that stuff. But when you connect person to person and you share pictures and you share images, it's a totally different forum and different aspect, right? It's everyone's usually very positive and motivating, and you find inspiration from the greats and people that are, say, your mentors and instructors, but you can also get such amazing inspiration from peers and colleagues.
I found that I was part of the SL2 launch and went around the country and spoke at the Leica stores. And what I figured out was Leica isn't a camera company, it's a community of people.
Exactly.
And, it was really awesome. And I found that community to be incredibly supportive and contrary to what a lot of people think about photographers, not competitive. People want to help each other and they share in the success of others. And it's been a delight.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. It's more of a community and a culture, and people are very welcoming. I mean, give anyone a chance to talk about Leica. If you let me nerd out, I'll just go for an hour straight about like lenses and cameras and stuff. But it's because ultimately it's not that it's just my job, but it's fun and I'm passionate about it. So I think a lot of us can connect with that. Now, I got a great question from the Q&A that I want to throw up to you. I've got a sequence of Om's images coming up. And then we've got a sequence of Chris's image. So the question is for both of you, but I want Chris, you to start off on this. Chris, what do you admire most about Om's photographic style? And then Om, you'll be answering the same for Chris. So what do you admire most about Om's photographic style as we look at some more of his images?
Well, let's look at the images. You want to go through a couple of them?
Sure, let's go through a couple. I put those together.
I mean, I can't believe that there's an animal in this photograph. That's the first thing I'd say.
Maximum wildlife by Om.
This is up close and personal.
But this is
this is what we're talking about.
And the fog. Om, I don't know if you have a middle name, but in my brain, I think it's Fog.
Well, Om talked about something which was I was there at the beginning of his photographic journey, or pretty close. And a lot of times when you're helping people with photography, they start to do what you do. And I do lots of portraiture, and Om did some of that. But Om has always been an original thinker, and he went off in his own direction. He found his style, and I would say Om has a much more distinctive style than I do. And when you see one of his photographs, it's one of his. And not only are his photos technically beautiful, but we often go to the same places and he sees the world differently than I do. And I wish I could do what he does. And, and just from how photos make you feel, his photographs touch my heart. They calm me. They bring me to a place that I want to be. His photographs are of places and experiences and emotions that I want to inhabit. And, if a photographer can accomplish that with a viewer, they've done a good job. And, I'm so proud of Om's work.
It's amazing. That's I can't agree more. I mean, there's something just always calming and relaxing about looking at Om's work. Om, you've started selling prints, I know, and we've had some people asking, and we'll have some information about these guys' websites and maybe where you can get some prints. I think that some of your images, I would dream of having some of these on my wall. I might have to hit you up for some stuff, because I think maybe, especially in tough times like today, there's something therapeutic about seeing these.
He's willing to trade this image for a monochrome camera, I hear.
Thank you, Chris. You know me so well.
I may need a lot of images. And speaking of which, this one you took in San Francisco, is that correct?
Yeah, this was from this past Thursday, actually.
Oh wow! I knew this. I didn't realize this was so recent.
Yeah, like this is the pandemic, the lockdown. I only have 1 or 2 streets I can walk on. So this is what I do now. I look for fog and mystery.
Right.
I don't know. It's like, thank you, Chris, for all those nice words you said. Thank you.
They're all true.
And so then, Om, what do you admire?
You better say something good here, Om.
you got a lot to live up to. I'm not gonna lie. So the pressure's a little bit on. But what do you admire most about Chris's photographic style? And I will add the disclaimer that
this is getting embarrassing.
This next picture was not exactly what I anticipated putting up for screen right now, but so be it. It's San Francisco.
This is another photo.
Well, there is a way I like. First of all, I love Chris. Like, forget about admire Chris's photographs. I just love Chris. Chris is what every decent human being should be. Unfortunately, there aren't. So, and his photographs just show what a great guy he is. I heard this from an Irish photographer, Brendan, who's like one of my favorite followers on Instagram. He said that photographs are packing up yesterday and taking it into tomorrow. And I just think Chris does that all day long for everybody, from the most famous people to the richest people to the people he meets on the street. And he just brings so much humanity in his photos. I love what he brings to the photos. He brings heart to he brings emotion, he brings joy, and he brings the memory to take to tomorrow. I think there is no other way. I think people think of Chris as a photographer. I just think of him as a storyteller. He just uses camera instead of a pen. And I just love everything he does. Like, I think he says he doesn't have a style. I can tell a Chris Michael photo, even even with a half an eye open, no problem. So for me, he's just fantastic. Like, even his landscapes have a Chris feel to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I often think of these next two, especially as
see, this is the photograph is so Chris, and this is a photo which is like my grail photo. Someday I will be able to treat human beings and landscape exactly like that. Someday it will happen, maybe not soon, but it's like, this is where I think this is just, again, a way of putting so much heart and emotion into a photo, which is what Chris does so beautifully.
Thank you.
And I'll add
and across the planet, like, he will connect to everybody and anybody from he will make Dalai Lama laugh, and he will make even the most boring, except one person he could make laugh. The name shall go unnamed. You got the joke.
Oh yeah, I got it. Yeah.
You got the joke. Right?
Yeah.
Well, and I'll add that I showed several of each of your images as I gave your intro. So Chris, you have so many more images. This is just a small selection. You have an incredibly vast body of work that frankly I think the average photographer would be jealous. Incredibly jealous just to have one aspect of your body of work, like just your Antarctica photos or just your portrait series or just your Svalbard images, and of course everyone is jealous of the Edge of Space selfie. So yeah, but again, you guys bring such unique perspectives and such amazing imagery and really great philosophies. One thing I've learned, like this has been really enlightening for me, just to, and so amazing to be a part of this talk with you guys, because it's one of those moments for me that personally that it reignites my love for photography and our greater community, because people can motivate each other and you guys learn from each other. And it's the best for everyone.
Well, in a way, photography is less about the image and more about the experience and the humanity and the connection. And the photograph is the byproduct.
Yeah, agreed. Well said. So with that being said, actually, we had another question from the Q&A. I kind of sped past the image earlier of this. I mean, you have a wide swath of portrait work. Chris, you have portraits that you shot all around the country. Even when you were touring the Leica stores for the launch of the SL2, you took pictures of kind of anyone and everyone that that you were involved with. You took a picture of me, which I was very flattered by. Someone asked in the Q&A, can you talk about your approach to portraiture and how you get these kinds of emotions out of people in these poses, or anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, when we think about what drives us, I mean, I find, I'm, you don't know this about me probably, but I moved 8 times as a kid. So I was always the outsider. And, the camera was a vehicle and has been a vehicle for me to engage in a world that was always difficult for me to engage in. And it's my excuse to talk to people. And it feels really good to make an image that matters to individuals. So I care deeply to do that. And that requires either going up to people I don't know, or even with all the Leica people to say, hey, let's take a minute or two and take that photo, because later on, you're going to look back at those photos, which meant very little at the time, and think, well, that was a great moment in my life. And so, when you engage with people in a kind of authentic way, you take photos over a long period of time, meaning sometimes I only have a few minutes with people, but sometimes I have a lifetime with people, where every time I see them, I make a photograph. And over time, you develop a body of work or an engagement style with people where at least some of those photos matter. I think there's also an element of disarming people when you take their photograph, smiling, showing them their picture, sharing the picture with them. And, it works. It works. I really work hard at making people feel comfortable and feel like I'm in their corner. This is a friend of ours, Michael Sharon, who was supposed to be on the trip with us. And, this is just one of many, many photos I have of him, but I just love this photograph. And he's a great guy. And this is a cool moment in his life and a cool time in his life. He's just a really wonderful human being. And to me, this captures kind of who he is on the inside, just a really good person.
Fantastic. Really appreciate you sharing that. And yeah, I just wanted to load in this one, another example of your amazing portrait work. Again, you have so many though to pick from. Another question that we got, I know we're kind of on the back end here, so feel free, everyone, we see your questions, throw more in, for these guys. Do either of you ever get bored with photography or feel stuck sometimes? And how do you get through creative blocks when it happens?
Well, I'll just jump in real quickly. Every day well, maybe not so much during quarantine, but every day I carry my camera with me everywhere I go. And I have just an incredible sense of excitement and anticipation with what's possible out there in the world with your camera. And so, it's been 20 years and I still feel that great excitement. Occasionally I've been some places where I just didn't feel as inspired. Like if I stay in San Francisco and I'm just walking the streets, they don't seem as compelling to me as they did when I first got there. And, that's the time you buy a new lens. Just kidding.
No,
but that can be the motivator. It can help.
Well, I think for me, when I'm not motivated or I've hit a slump, like creative slump, I just don't do anything. I just walk away. I've been through the same thing with writing as well. So I've learned the hard way that sometimes you just can't fight it and you just gotta step out and just, do something else. And and it just comes back. Except for me, coming back is if there is fog, I'm on in 30 seconds. It's like everything goes away from me. Yeah.
Fantastic. So a couple more questions before we have to wrap up. And I just wanted to, again, throw another portrait example, Chris, and one of the images you shared with me, I wanted to put up. I love the look and the depth, and great example.
People might be wondering why I'm taking photographs of people with a gun. Do you know why he has 2 guns? Why does he have guns? What do you think?
I'm guessing in case of extreme emergency when it comes to wildlife in this extreme environment.
Yeah, it's actually required in Svalbard. It's polar bear protection. So.
Oh wow, gotcha.
He's not protesting the quarantine or anything.
Nothing like that. So I have a couple more questions for you guys. There's a question from the audience. What's both of you, and Om, you can lead on this one. What's your dream destination to photograph if you have one? And what's your dream destination to photograph? Or have you photographed everything you want to see?
No. I think so. Dream destination for me would be to go back to Ladakh in winter. And I would love to do that, in deep winter. But that was before the quarantine. I think after the self-isolation, my dream destination today, tomorrow, and forever perhaps is going to be Ocean Beach in San Francisco. I didn't realize how much I loved that place till I couldn't go there. Mm-hmm. And I think that's my dream destination. Only 8 miles away from where I live. So
that's a great. I've been going there quite a lot, and it's something special. It's homeland. It's homeland. It's all foggy. There's nothing there. It has all of the elements. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I'm always going to the most extreme location that I can find, and of course, it changed me too. And that I feel a little less compelled to going very far to make these photographs. I feel like there are incredible scenes to be documented right around us if you just know how to look. I'm signing up on the Ladakh trip. I've been there. It's great. I'd love to go in the winter. Om and I share one thing in common, and that is we do a lot of color photography that's monochromatic. So places like Antarctica, Svalbard, Lofoten, Ladakh, Alaska,
Yellowstone, Iceland.
Yellowstone, these places are awesome, I think. And, I could just keep going back. And, most of all, I enjoy traveling with my friends because along the way, not only do we have the experience of creating these images, but I can also capture some photos of them along the way too. So.
Yeah, Chris, you put a lot of care into, we've seen some of your portraits here. You put a lot of care into the pictures that you take of just your friends and even people you just kind of meet while traveling, So what's then next for you guys once things get back to normal? Will it be the destinations that you're dreaming of, or what's next for it?
I think for me, it would be to have coffee with Chris in person, not on Zoom. That would be pretty awesome. And probably go to Ocean Beach and just kind of make photographs for 2 or 3 days.
Now that Om is shooting less long exposures, I'll go back to Ocean Beach with you. You didn't realize, but in all of those photos, not all of them, some of those photos, I was in the background. I had made 600 photographs while we were waiting for his long exposure to finish.
It's again, the different styles, right? And long exposure takes quite a bit of discipline. You're not going to come away with much, and you might spend a lot of time to not come away with anything, maybe if the photo doesn't work out, right?
Well, the big idea is you only need one photo. So if you do it right, that's all you need.
Well said.
Nothing wrong with that.
So this has been fantastic, and I really appreciate both of you guys' time. We have had a variety of questions from attendees. We've had some great conversation. We've seen some amazing work from both of you, and we are just hitting the hour mark but I've got one last question, so don't everyone jump out just yet. We go a little bit over time because I've been dying to ask you guys this question. We've seen your work in all kinds of amazing locations, but also some stuff that you shoot locally and all around, and we talked a little bit about trying to free yourself from that creative block if it comes up. So for both of you, and Om, you can take the lead on this one. How does photographing an everyday or what sometimes people find as mundane places. And I'm asking this because, again, many of us are stuck at home now and trying to find our own motivation, right? And something to photograph. When you're so used to going out, venturing out, and doing these exciting trips, or finding things even in your local area that's really unique, is there any advice or any tips on, like, finding motivation every day in mundane places? What do you do to photograph that?
You saw one of my photos on from 3 days ago in San Francisco, and this is as mundane, that's as routine a walk as you can get. I've been doing it for 60 plus days now. I walk up and down Embarcadero every day. It's the same thing. Yet after 40 days of doing that, I started to see things. I started to see things which were intriguing, they were mysterious, they inspired some kind of feeling inside me. And I think that's when, the photograph just happened. Plus fog, you know.
Always
But
fog.
like again, at home, like when you're trying to make a photograph which of something mundane, or I don't see making photos at home which are as mundane, right? If you have kids, if you have a dog, just those are like amazing moments to create memories for tomorrow. And at the same time, you can create so many interesting still lives, using the natural light, sunlight, shadows of the lamp. Like, we are stuck. Doesn't mean we can't go anywhere. Like I remember being a kid in Delhi. We were not very rich, but I could read a lot of books from the library, and those books took me places. It let imagination run wild, and I think that's what this isolation is trying to tell us, that maybe we don't need to be somewhere else to be somewhere, right? We can be right where we are and still go someplace. And I think creativity is just that, taking your mind some other place. And I think uh, I've been trying to do some, in-home still life photography. It's not very great, but I'm still trying. It's something new. Sometimes I take macro pictures with my iPhone and moment lenses. And I'll make, macro photos of like record player playing, or like the book, or like how the coffee is being lit up by the sun, something random. And why not? And I think something might unlock inside me, which will be my next chapter in photography.
Yeah, just
That's
because
how I think.
Yeah, like, and kind of like you said, just because we're stuck physically doesn't mean we should try to feel stuck creatively and end up here. We should try to
I
let that
mean,
out somehow.
Stephen Hawking couldn't do much, and yet he could do so much, right? And we are only stuck in four walls. Come on. Like that's a small limitation. Limitation is all of our own making. So.
And Chris, how about you? How do you thrive in limitation, which is something that I know you kind of are a fan of when you use a camera like the M10 monochrome and things like that.
Yeah. Well, that's why Ohm's my guru, because he's right. The world is meeting us halfway, whether we have the courage to get there or not, and have the vision to get there or not. That's up to us. So when I feel stuck, that's my problem. It's not that I'm in a place that there aren't great photographs to be made. Just one small comment that Ohm touched on. We are living in an extraordinary time, a time that people will talk about for generations, and it's up to us to document it. Our families, the people around us, the world that we live in, these will become historically important photographs. So there is no shortage of opportunity.
Well, very, very well said. Thank you both. And yeah, I have to man, that's such a great point. It's, just because they may not be images even that we make at home and memories that will be in the history books, they're part of our history and part of a historic moment for all of us. So I really, again, thank you both so much for being here with us. Please, everyone, check out Ohm and Chris on Instagram and also their personal websites. Take a look at Ohm's prints that he has for sale. Chris, sorry, do you have are you also any opportunities for people to buy prints?
Yeah,
or
people can buy prints on the site.
Cool. Yeah. So check out both of their works on their websites, and get yourself a print, because I think both of these men have some amazing work that could find a great home in your home.
Antonio, thank you so much. This is just such an honor to be here with all of you, and I'm grateful for Leica too.
Thank you, Antonio. And, again, thank you, Leica, for making the best camera in the world. Like SL, baby.
Awesome. No, I appreciate it. To me, this is just a joy. This is just a pleasure to do this kind of stuff, because, photographers like you, creatives like you guys, I get some motivation from it, and it's always fun to chat and look at you guys' work. Everyone, thank you for coming and staying a little bit over time. We got another program coming up on Tuesday, May 5th at 4:00 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific Time. That'll be New York Lockdown, a visual diary with Peter Turnley. So please check out the Stay Home with Leica page so you can see all the programs that are coming up. We still have more coming at you 3 times a week, Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. So we're very excited to have you again. But in the meantime, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Chris and Om. Thanks for the questions, all your attendees. And this was some great conversation and some fantastic images. I expected nothing less from both of you. So in the meantime, until next time, thanks, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.